My lord, I believe he is the one written of in the Necronomicon. He who's prophesied to fall from the heavens and deliver us from the terrors of the Deadites.
Easy now, Chief. I don't know how I got here. And,
To the pit with him! Back up there on the heart!
My name is Ash, and I am a slave. Close as I can figure it, the year is 1300 AD, and I'm being dragged to my death.
You, sir, are not one of my vassals. Who are you?
Who wants to know? There is an evil awakened in this land. And while my people fight for their very souls against it, you, Henry the Red, wage war on us. I shall see you dead.
yeah. All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. See this? This is my boomstick!
Now, let's talk about how I get back home.
Only the Necronomicon has the power. Within its pages are passages that can send you back to your time. When thou retrievest the book from its cradle, you must recite the words, Clatu, Berata, Nictu.
I got it! I know your damn words, all right? Now you get this straight, to both of you. If I get that book, you send me back. After that, I'm history. Yeah!
When you removed the Necronomicon from the cradle, did you speak the words?
Yeah, basically.
Klaatu! Marada!
Dung-eating fool! Thou hast doomed us all! The evil has a terrible hunger for the Necronomicon, and it will come here to get it.
You shall die!
Yo, she-bitch.
Let's go.
Give me some sugar, baby.
Late 1992 saw the arrival of the third and final film in Sam Raimi's Evil Dead series, Army of Darkness. During the course of early 1993, it made its way across the USA and to Europe. It is surprising the film originally opened in Taiwan, as it's quite rare to see an American movie debut in Asia. It was intended that Army of Darkness would come out in the summer of '92, as the film was finished in the spring of that year, but it sat on the shelf for nearly 6 months. The producer, Dino De Laurentiis, got into a conflict with Universal Studios over the rights to the character Hannibal Lecter, as Dino had produced Manhunter and Universal wanted to do the sequel, Silence of the Lambs. So the time it took to sort out a deal contributed to its delay, as did the MPAA, who weren't happy with the content of the movie and gave it an NC-17 rating, a big no-no for studios. Bruce Campbell often jokes about the rating, stating Goodfellas had far more violence but received an R rating, and Army of Darkness had talking skeletons and got an NC-17. It makes no sense. Universal Studios were pushing for a PG-13 and wanted edits to the movie, but director Sam Raimi pushed for an R rating and put back in some of the footage that was a victim to Universal's hasty editing. But this resulted in an 81-minute cut for US audiences, down from its original length of 96 minutes. Some parts of the world did get to see the 96-minute version, but most got the slightly trimmed release at 88 minutes. Universal didn't want to call the film Evil Dead 3, as they wanted it to stand on its own, so the title of Army of Darkness was decided on. Originally Sam wanted to use the title The Medieval Dead, but this was only used in the UK as part of a subtitle. Produced on a relatively large budget for the time at $13 million, it failed to break even in the United States, but crawled back enough to make a profit overseas, totaling $21 million. Reviews were generally mixed upon release, with critics citing they enjoyed the visual effects, but felt the lack of horror, weak love story and issues with its characters left them feeling there wasn't really anyone to root for, causing them to feel underwhelmed by the movie. The movie's change in tone towards more comedy and less horror left the series' hardcore fans a bit disappointed. The film today is considered a cult classic and has built up a huge fan base over the years. People returned to it on VHS and realised what the film was trying to do, and found something truly fantastic. It has been released on DVD dozens of times, in many different variations over the years. I think the Evil Dead trilogy has been highly abused by distributors for their constant re-releases of the films. Plans had been put in motion to make a third Evil Dead film prior to the production of Darkman. Evil Dead 2 made enough money internationally that Dino De Laurentiis was willing to finance a sequel. Initially, Raimi invited Scott Spiegel to co-write Army of Darkness because he had done a good job on Evil Dead 2, but he was unavailable. Sam and his brother Ivan decided to co-write the film together. Ivan would later help Sam with Spider-Man 2 and 3. They worked on the script throughout the pre-production and production of Darkman. They wanted to inject more humour into the script and change Ash's location to get him out of the cabin, which helped transport the threat of the Evil Dead to a wider playing field. Principal photography took place between soundstage and on-location work from May to August of '91. Army of Darkness was filmed in Bronson Canyon and Vasquez Rock's Natural Area Park, the famous Batcave entrance, and the interior shots were filmed on a Introvision stage in Hollywood. Most of the filming took place at night, and the filmmakers shot most during the summer when the days were longest and the nights were the shortest. Money problems forced the director of photography, Bill Pope, to shoot only for certain hours Monday through Friday because he could not be paid his standard fee. Bill had just worked on Darkman for Sam and built up a good working relationship. Second unit cameraman William Messer shot many of the action sequences on the weekend to keep the film on schedule. While Dino De Laurentiis gave Raimi and his crew freedom to shoot the film the way they wanted, Universal took over during post-production. This is something that has plagued Sam's films over the years. Darkman also faced issues when it came to the final edit. Everyone's favourite B-movie actor Bruce Campbell plays Ash Williams and Evil Ash. Bruce Campbell starred as Ash in the previous films and took on a larger role during number 2 to become the main lead of the series. The title during the opening credits reads Bruce Campbell versus the Army of Darkness, and that's what people want to see, Bruce in action. His character has certainly changed over the films, and most dramatically in this movie. He is far more cowardly, a bigger boaster, unlikable to others around him, and switches moods all the time. He has bursts of being a hero and a confident leader, then suddenly only thinks about himself and his well-being. But with all his problems, he knows how to deal with the undead. Embeth Davidtz plays Sheila, the love interest for Ash. She at first believes he killed her brother in battle, but realises he is not from our time and begins to warm to him quickly despite his ego-driven attitude. Embeth went on to have a successful career and starred in Schindler's List a year later. She also popped up recently in The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 playing Mary Parker. Marcus Gilbert plays Lord Arthur. He mastered his acting skills in theatre and starred in over 50 commercials, but made only a few appearances in movies such as Rambo 3, working mostly in TV. Lord Arthur is the leader of the Knights against the Deadites and is not keen on Ash, taking a disliking to him straight away. Ian Abercrombie plays the Wise Man. He unfortunately passed away in 2012. Ian had a very successful acting career and starred in hundreds of films and TV shows, most often playing a supporting character. The Wise Man has a deep knowledge of the Book of the Dead and believes Ash was sent from the heavens to save them from the Deadites. Richard Grove plays Duke Henry the Red. Richard spent his early years working in theatre and made the jump to TV in the early 90s. He's popped up in a number of movies like Point Break and Money Train. Duke Henry is Lord Arthur's opposition, both appearing to be fighting over land, and there is a misconception that Henry is working with the Deadites. Bridget Fonda, who was a huge fan of Evil Dead 2, wanted to play a part in the new film, and took on the role of Ash's girlfriend Linda in the opening prologue sequence. Ted Raimi, Sam's brother, who often makes cameos in his films, plays 4 different characters throughout: the cowardly warrior, second supportive villager, a random knight, and Anthony the S-Mart clerk. At the end of Evil Dead 2, Ash is dragged into a time portal and sent back to medieval times, where he lands in 1300 AD. He is almost immediately captured by Lord Arthur's men, who suspect him to be an agent for Duke Henry the Red, with whom Arthur is at war. His weapons are confiscated and he is chained up with Henry and dragged back to the castle. Ash attempts to get out of it by begging Henry to tell Arthur he doesn't know him. Failing to persuade Arthur, Ash is thrown into a pit where he fights off a deadite and regains his chainsaw from Arthur's wise man, who strongly believes he is the chosen one. He escapes the pit, leaving everyone shocked and scared. Lord Arthur challenges Ash when he demands Henry and his men to be set free, but Arthur's sword is blown apart by Ash's shotgun. He intimidates them and kills off a deadite in full view of everyone. Ash is celebrated as a hero and is treated like royalty, but maintains he wants to get back to his own time. According to the wise man, the only way Ash can return to his own time is to retrieve the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, a book with magical powers. However, in order to go on his quest, he needs to build a new hand, which is totally ridiculous but hilarious at the same time. He becomes attracted to Sheila, the sister of one of Arthur's fallen knights, who at first treated him like crap, believing he killed her brother, but in realising her error, she also warms to him. The following day, Ash starts his search for the Necronomicon. As he enters a haunted forest, an unseen force pursues Ash through the woods, but he finds refuge in a windmill. He sees his reflection moving in a mirror, which he smashes, but his smaller reflections climb out from the shattered mirror and torment him. One dives down Ash's throat and uses his body to become a full-size clone of Ash, starting out with a creepy eye pushing its way out of his shoulder. It gets bigger and separates from him, forming an identical copy, the evil Ash. However, he is quickly disposed of and buried despite his head still being alive. When he arrives at the Necronomicon's location, he finds 3 books instead of 1. After 2 failed attempts, he finds the real one and attempts to say the magic phrase that will allow him to remove the book safely. Klaatu, Barata, Nikto, but forgets the last word and pretends to say it while coughing. He grabs the book and causes the evil dead to awaken. Evil Ash is reformed and plans to seek revenge and regain the Book of the Dead. Now, I'm sure many Army of Darkness fans are aware of the various cuts. For me, being from the UK, I grew up with the proper ending where we find Ash waking up in the far future. I didn't know the movie was cut down heavily for US audiences until I got hold of the Laserdisc in the late 90s. I watched it and thought, what's going on? So many jokes were trimmed and the ending was totally different. The new ending was the result of screen test audiences feeling the original ending was too downbeat. The new ending was put together quickly and is very funny, as you see Ash shoot off endless rounds of shotgun shells. It has plenty of cheesy dialogue, but it makes more sense for Ash to wake up too far in the future. He's an idiot at heart and would do something like that, and seeing the introvision shot of a city destroyed is great on a visual level. Some reports online say the S-Mart ending was part of the UK cinema release, but was changed to the downbeat ending for the VHS version. I'm not sure if that is true, but I'm sure most people outside the United States were familiar with the original ending. A lot of good stuff was cut out of the US release, which is very frustrating. If you want to own the longer version, it only exists in a bog standard DVD transfer, which often dips into VHS quality. In the UK, we have to make do with the US cut in HD. They should be releasing the original UK cut. Since the introduction of DVD, studios just now distribute their US theatrical versions across the world, and don't spend the money to offer fans the original cuts as they were intended. Pretty much every scene in the film has been slightly trimmed for the US cut, just to make it whip along quicker. The windmill battle with the smaller versions of Ash is heavily cut. There is alternative dialogue for the face-off with Evil Ash. Dialogue between characters is shortened as well. Just tons of minor edits, often destroying the film's pacing. I did read there is a 101-minute version of the film, but I don't believe that has been released, and I think fans have just restored deleted scenes back into the director's cut to give that longer running time. The deleted scenes on the Blu-ray and DVD exhibit some great moments of classic Evil Dead. There is a slightly alternative intro with Ash talking to camera with a different voiceover. Ash walks around the forest spooked out and sees himself in the windmill and the door closes. Creepy stuff. The scene where Ash enlists the help of Henry the Red is great and should have been left in the film. It just adds extra detail to the story, which is sadly missing in all versions. The makeup and puppet effects were provided by KNB Effects Group, run by Howard Berger and Greg Nicotero. Those names may be very familiar to you now as they provide their talents on The Walking Dead. The team used every trick in the book to achieve the effects Sam wanted. There is no CGI in the film, all practical effects with a mix of stop motion and front projection. You can clearly see a tribute to Ray Harryhausen's work in the stop motion. The skeletons have the added brows to make them look evil. They built around 10 puppets for all the close-ups and over 100 suits for the stunt people to wear in the background and for the interaction in the battles. Many of the stunt performers were women because of their thinner frames, and a large number were dancers because they had the stamina to cope with the lengthy action scenes. Sam Raimi was a big fan of Introvision, which he used in Darkman. Introvision uses front projected images with live actors instead of the traditional rear projection. Introvision blended components for more realistic looking results. To achieve this effect, Raimi used 60-foot tall Scotch Light front projected screens, miniatures and background plates. This would create an incredible amount of interaction between the background, which doesn't exist, and the foreground, which is usually the actor. You would have no matte lines or worry about the final results looking flat and unrealistic. The effects in Army of Darkness are for the most part very good. The stop motion is a lot of fun to watch and captures the magic of Ray Harryhausen's classic work. There is the odd shot that does look wobbly, but I'll give it a pass because Sam makes great use of the effects, so there is this inherent charm to it. I love all the front projection work. I'd happily have Introvision over green screen any day. Joseph Loduca returns to compose the score, having provided his talents on the previous 2 entries. This time he gets more money to work with and above all, time. Having been a close collaborator with Sam Raimi, he's always delivered what the director wanted. Surprisingly, Danny Elfman provided the main theme for the film. Danny had just provided his work on Darkman for Sam, but I'm not sure why he brought in Danny to do just the main theme. Maybe Danny was considered to do the full score, but at the last minute didn't have the time, but contributed a theme that Sam could use, and Joe would fill in the rest. The score is probably the best out of the series. Great spooky music with lashings of comedic flair, musical cues that fit the period, and great action driven music to fit the battle sequences. You can get the score on CD, but it's been out of print for years. Thankfully, it is available on iTunes to purchase. There were no video games released at the time that focused on the film, but in the years to come, developers started taking advantage of the Evil Dead franchise and started creating their own Ash adventures. Most of the games focused around the events of Evil Dead 2, but in 2011 there was a mobile game focused around Army of Darkness. It sees you play as Ash as you attempt to stop the endless onslaught of skeletons attacking the castle. The reviews were average, but it certainly wasn't an awful game and was fun in short bursts. Dark Horse Comics published a 3-part series in comic form in '93, but Ash has returned for more adventures in comic book form over the years. There are tons of series on the character and endless amounts of crossovers. We see Ash face off against Darkman, Xena, Marvel Zombies and Freddy and Jason. Fans have been begging for a 4th film for years, but Bruce Campbell has always said that if they made one, the fans probably wouldn't like it. They would say, well, it's not as good as number 3, like the fans said when Army of Darkness came out, it wasn't as good as number 2, and so on. But finally, after so many requests from fans and large sales of the films on VHS and DVD over the years, a 10-episode series has been commissioned. With filming taking place in New Zealand, we see Bruce return as Ash in Ash vs. the Evil Dead. The Evil Dead remake certainly didn't set the world alight and was forgotten about shortly after it was released, but with Sam and Bruce returning, I really hope it delivers and gives us, the fans, the ultimate Evil Dead experience. Army of Darkness was the first of the trilogy I saw as a kid. The cover for the VHS cover looked amazing. My friend and I rented it thanks to my dad, with it being a 15 rated film. We both thought the movie was incredible, full of great laughs and quotable lines, and a hero who was a complete dickhead but also so cool at the same time. I didn't realise my older sister had a copy of Evil Dead 2. We looked at the cover and thought, wait a minute, that guy looks familiar. And when we watched it, we were so surprised to see the same character. We didn't know Army of Darkness was a sequel, but thought it was a standalone movie, because there was no Evil Dead in the title. When you're a kid, you're often oblivious to the obvious things. The opening for the film has a prologue, so the connection to number 2 is clearly there, but for a newcomer it could just serve as a quick opening to get the character back in time and not know it was the 3rd in a series. Having Ash thrown into a large world made it feel very different to the previous entries, where we were confined to a small cabin in the woods. It felt like a big studio picture and deviated from its smaller independent status. Fans of the series often cited number 2 as their favourite, with its balanced mix of horror and comedy that sometimes leans more towards horror, whereas number 1 was a straight out gore fest, and number 3 is pure slapstick. Army of Darkness is certainly not perfect and has its issues, generally with pacing and character development. Ash is the main focus, and with Evil Ash as well, it's all about Bruce Campbell. The supporting characters are just there to help tell the story and move it along. They appear underdeveloped. The love story is very much forced and loosely told, especially in the theatrical cut, and the ending battle felt dragged out. With the many edits, I think it was sensible for Universal to trim this section down for its theatrical release, but to be honest, I would have trimmed a little bit more and expanded more of the earlier scenes to give more meat to the characters and set pieces. Despite so many variations of the film, I still think there is another cut that needs to be made. The deleted scenes of Henry the Red should have been restored. He is made out to be an important character and a strong opposition, but has little screen time. He makes an appearance at the beginning and arrives fashionably late at the end. Because I've overdosed on the movie over the years and watched it way too much, the gags and jokes are certainly not as strong as they used to be, but that comes with all comedies. You know the punchline. But what I enjoy most now is listening to all the random banter in the background, especially the skeletons, just the stuff you often miss the first or the 10th time round. Loads of hidden gags, but the one line that gets me every time is when Ash returns with the book and his supporters fail to get out of his way.
Yeah, great. Get the fuck out of my face.
For first timers who haven't had a chance to watch the film, the comedy will have you in stitches and you will be quoting lines for weeks. Sam's way of writing and directing gives the movie constant energy and punch that makes him very unique. You watch his films and I think, oh, I could do that, but you realise how difficult it is to replicate his style without it looking like an amateur student film. Quick whip pans, crazy zooms, Dutch angles and creative setups of visual effects, it's his own brand of filmmaking. The first half of the film sees more scenes set during the day, which dilutes any attempts at horror, but it manages to capture the magic of Evil Dead 2. When Ash enters the windmill, you get more of what you are familiar with. The photography by Bill Pope is fantastic, but when I revisit Evil Dead 2, I love the saturated gritty look of the original design. It felt like a lived-in world and something from the past, whereas Army of Darkness fell more in line with the fantasy genre, often looking like the Xena and Hercules TV series, which Sam later on produced. It's supposed to be England, but unfortunately it does look like its real shooting location, California. The main reason people love Army of Darkness is because of Bruce Campbell. His comedic timing and attitude make him so entertaining to watch, and he has maintained that throughout all his films. You could argue his acting is a bit cheesy, but that's the charm of it. He can do serious stuff, and the film even exhibits that in the beginning. His voiceover is deadly serious and has no comedic tone to it. He has a strong voice to deliver narration. Bruce worked his arse off on the film, playing 2 characters, having to get in shape, taking part in choreographed battles, and he co-produced it, so he put a lot of effort into producing the best film he could. Army of Darkness was a fun and refreshing finale to the series. It didn't feel like a retread of the previous films, it went in a different direction. Some may say it went a bit too far, but for me it's a highly memorable film and an important part of my young teenage years. Once I was introduced to Bruce Campbell, I was an instant fan. This guy was the coolest guy on the planet, and he still is to this day. If you haven't seen Army of Darkness, where have you been? Go buy it as soon as possible. If you do own it, then I hope you are already reaching for your copy to watch it again for the 100th time.
You there, handsome
family now. We shall storm their castle and get my book. Give me some sugar, baby.
I say we stay here and fight it out.
Are all men from the future loud-mouthed braggarts?
Nope. Just me, baby. Just me.
How will we fight an army of the dead at our castle walls? How will you fight that? More words? Most of our people have already fled. We are but 60 men.
Then we'll get Henry the Red and his men to fight with us.
Where are they keeping my book?
There, my lord. Beyond the wall. The parapet. That would be the most likely place.
Right. Bring me forth into that castle! Forward! Forward! Death to the mortals! Yeah! Fire! Oh!
You found me beautiful once.
Honey, you got real ugly.
Come to Papa. Get him!
Hail to the king, baby.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find more retrospective reviews by clicking on these videos. If you want to watch my upcoming reviews early before they go live on YouTube, you can support me through Patreon.